let's say I have two vectors right here, v and w, and I want to find the angle between those two vectors. I can actually do that using this equation right here. Cosine of theta, theta being the angle between the two vectors, equals the dot product of those two vectors divided by their magnitudes multiplied together. And then at this point, it's pretty easy to solve for theta. I just have to do arc cosine of both sides, and that would get theta by itself. So let's practice this. Let's start with these two vectors right here. Now I'm going to have you start by visualizing these two vectors. So let's draw this out. I have one vector that is at 3, comma, negative 3 root 3. So it's going to be about there. Call that vector v. And then I have vector w, which is at negative root 3. Oops, that should be out a little more. Comma 1. So here's vector w. And I want to find the angle between these two vectors. So we know cosine of theta equals the dot product of these two vectors. So dot product, we're going to multiply the x values together plus multiply the y values together. Divided by the magnitude of these two vectors multiplied together. So let's come over here to the side and let's find the magnitude of these vectors. Remember, the magnitude is the same thing as the radius or the length of the vector. So you just use square root of x squared plus y squared, which is 9 plus 27, which is square root of 36, which gives me 6. So the magnitude of v is 6. And let's find the magnitude of w. Same thing. Take x squared plus y squared and square root it. 3 plus 1, which is the square root of 4, which is 2. So I've got this right here. Let's simplify this and see what we get. So 3 times negative root 3 is negative 3 root 3 minus 3 root 3 all over 6 times 2, which is 12. So this is going to be negative 6 root 3 over 12. Or negative 6 divided by 12, I could simplify that to negative root 3 over 2. And we can take the arc cosine of both sides to get theta by itself. And that's going to give me, if I just type that into my calculator, 150 degrees. Now, before we move on to the next problem, I want you to notice that the angle it gave me, this 150 degrees, is the smaller of the two angles. And I want you to think for just a second, why did it give me the smaller angle between these two vectors instead of this bigger angle between those two vectors? And will it always give you the smaller one, or will there be times where it gives you the bigger one? The answer to that comes from when we did the arc cosine. Because remember, the domain restriction for cosine is quadrant 1 and quadrant 2, or 0 to 180 degrees, which means anytime you type this arc cosine into your calculator, it's going to give you the smaller angle between those two vectors, because the bigger angle will always be greater than 180. So you can trust that whenever you type this into your calculator, it's going to give you the smaller angle between them because of that arc cosine. So now that we've done that, we have two more examples. I would like you to try this next example. Let's start by sketching them out together. So I have 2, 2. There's vector v. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, comma, -5. There's vector w. And remember, with how your calculator is programmed, it's going to give you the smaller angle between these two vectors because this one is greater than 180 and our cosine is only quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. It's between 0 and 180. So I want you to use the same equation we just did, do the dot product divided by the magnitudes, take arc cosine of both sides, and solve for what that angle is between these two vectors. Then come back and check your work. Let's check your work. Excuse me, on top when I did the dot product, I got 10 minus 10, which is 0. Magnitude of v, I got square root of 8. Magnitude of w, I got square root of 50. 0 divided by this is still just 0. And arc cosine of 0 is 90 degrees. So these are actually a perfect right angle. Makes that 90-degree angle we like. Ta-da! Okay, let's try one more for this video. This time I want you to go from drawing it out all the way to the answer. So start by drawing these two vectors out, then plugging in everything into the equation to find the angle between them. Come back to check your work. Let's check your work. So I found the dot product to be 6 minus 4. Magnitude of v, I got 5. Magnitude of w, I got root 5. So I got 2 over 5 root 5. Did the arc cosine of that in my calculator to find the angle between them is 79.69 degrees. So that is all we're going to do with practicing using the dot product to find the angle between two vectors. In the next video, we're going to use the dot product to find a different thing.